Look, we all hate that feeling of being trapped in studio because of all the work architecture school has, while your other friends just seem to always have all the free time in the world. So wouldn't it be nice to just escape studio and find a way to prioritize your life beyond architecture school?
Dude, we both felt this way so many times in our 5 years of architecture
Yeah.
school. And there was always so much work to do, and we felt like we always had to be in studio to actually get everything done on time. We had enough, and so in our third year, we found out how to prioritize our personal life and still get studio done.
Right. In this episode, we're going to share with you our practical and proven strategies for balancing studio work and reclaiming our free time, how we set healthy boundaries with studio in our personal lives, and give you our best time management tips so you can escape studio and enjoy life more. So, if that sounds interesting to you, pause your studio project, pull out your planner, and let's get into it. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Crit Room Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, with my lovely co host.
Albert, just Albert.
Yeah.
I'm flattered, Ryan.
Oh, of course. It's been a long time since I've seen you, it feels like. We've been so busy this week.
Oh yeah, for sure. I still have not caught up on my sleep, but we'll get there.
You were in the dungeon for that portfolio, I swear.
No, I was texting Ryan, and then I just got back to like around 12:30. I got back to him like 12:30, and I was just like, I took the fattest nap, and it was so nice. But now my sleep is
Yeah, this
messed
dude's
up.
taking naps at 9 p.m. What- How does that happen?
Dude, I have no clue, but something about the portfolio thing just messed up my. I don't know, because I'm not supposed to be taking naps at that time.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a whole different adjustment. I'm just going from even school and graduating that. A whole different beast is just trying to tackle the professional world and trying to balance that whole time and everything too. Which, that could be its whole other episode, but we're kind of focused on the whole studio time management and balancing that because they are very different. Part of that too is, architecture always seems to just be stressful. And it always seems like we're trying to find ways to balance our life a little bit better because it can be really demanding at certain times. Architecture is an industry that has a lot of strenuous, like you have to spend so many hours in front of a computer screen to get certain work done. So a lot of that is just how do you balance it? How do you find time to prioritize things outside of work, outside of studio, and everything else? And like we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of stuff in studio especially where we realize like enough is enough. We can't just be in studio all the time. We need to do this is college. Like this is supposed to be the time where we're doing everything.
What made it worse was that sometimes, and I don't know how that is for you guys as in your school, but in our school there was times where we were just stuck in the basement, and so there was no natural light coming in.
Yeah.
It just was not feeling good. So definitely sometimes we needed to get out of there. There was a one time when we went upstairs to the second floor, first floor, and we were like, wow, there's so much light up here.
Floor to ceiling windows, natural light, vitamin D. Give me that. I need it.
I felt like we were in prison.
Push the freshmen away from their window seat desk. Get out of the way. I need this. You don't know what I've been through. No, but I think we can start out this episode by explaining a little bit more about where we came from and when we started to realize this was such an issue. Like, when did we really feel that we were starting to have our health detrimented, have our mental health detrimented, and everything related to that? So, we were just talking about it a little bit. Parts of being in the basement studio doesn't help anybody for anything.
Yeah.
But there are also parts of that beforehand where I never was in the basement studio until my fourth and fifth year. So I didn't really deal with any of that until later.
Yeah, you had it
But
for 2 years.
I did not get very lucky with that.
Oh, dude,
I
that's
think it should be illegal for fifth years to be in the basement. Come on. We've been there for 5 years. You can't let us have the top of the top.
Dude, facts. I think
All
that
that money I gave you.
it just makes senioritis worse.
Oh my god.
You don't want to work on your project, and now they stick you in the basement too. Now you don't even want to work.
Now it's like, okay, you just don't want me to work. I see. And then to add insult to injury, they give you the squeakiest pipe in the world.
Yeah. I remember.
And you have to deal with that for weeks on end because we don't know how to fix the problem.
What happened?
We'll just
what,
tighten this little screw, and then 2 minutes later it starts going again. They're like, oh my.
what happened? What happened? Give us some.
Yeah, I don't know. We still don't know to this day. There's just some pipe, and it just constantly it's leaking, and then it just creates a super annoying sound. RIP headphone users, if we're about to put it in. I can't know if we can find the clip of the video or something, but
Yeah.
we'll put it in here.
Yeah.
But you can see that was our every single day.
I remember there was also that one time when we visited down in the basement, and then some people from the first floor were dropping things to the floor.
Oh my god.
And hitting your guys' models. Like there was a legit like an X-Acto blade that just fell off from the top.
Yeah, I think it was Tom. He was just sitting at his desk, and then he's like, "What the?" We all look over. He's like, you look over, you see a X-Acto blade just stuck in the table like that. Like that could have been my head. Like, oh my god.
It was just so funny. Like that basement thing was just so cursed.
Yeah. No, but okay. Let's start out with explaining where we were at first year and maybe second year. Because I think it was third year where we started to really realize that, okay, there's some problems. We need to put some boundaries in place. So if I were to describe my first year experience, maybe more of the workload, it was a lot. I mean, I'm pretty sure our program is specifically designed to be challenging and difficult at the forefront because, for one, I do kind of agree with it because you do need a certain amount of dedication to really want to, stick through architecture. So if you can't handle the workload up front, then there's no chance for you to make it like later on in studios and stuff at the program.
Right.
So they made it intentionally difficult at first, I'm pretty sure, just to weed out whoever wasn't really about it and just decided to join architecture because they flipped a coin and they said, oh, that looks like it's what I'm going to do. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where it's just our homework. It was amazing at first. You went from high school, you just graduated doing calculus or pre-calc or whatever. And now you sit down and your first homework assignment is find some things to draw on the weekend. And you're like, this is amazing. I get to draw for homework. What? This is great. And then you realize it's kind of like in the homework assignments where it's like, oh, only 3 math problems for homework today. That's great. And it's like problem 1, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Problem 2, A, B, C, D, E, F.
Yeah.
Problem 3, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You're like, I see how this works. So Freshman Studio was basically that. It's like, oh, just draw these things. So like, oh, easy. But make like 15 diagrams. You're like, what?
Yeah. Remember that homework given to us, and then specific because when you transferring from the mentality of like high school and into college, you don't really, well, from my point of view, you don't really do like math homeworks, all those different things together with people. I was kind of just a person that was like, if I do homework, I'm gonna do it by myself. And whenever architecture school started, and I was like, bro, I have no idea what any of these things mean. And so we essentially that first year we started making our own community because it was just like everyone was traumatized by the same assignment, and we were like, what? How do we do this?
Does anybody know what we're doing? Okay, you have an idea? Okay, let's just copy that guy. We'll do, yeah.
No, for real. They were like, what is balance? I'm like, I mean, I know what that is. Like in art, like you want to balance things visually, but like, how do you diagram that?
Yeah. I just remember we were all just really stressed out because even though it sounded easy, there was so much that went behind it, and we were just not prepared to understand what really was really what was about to go on in studio. And to make matters worse, it was all a lot of just trying to learn the ropes for the first time. I mean, you have to do it. It's literally with everything. It's difficult at first because you just don't understand it. But once you begin to understand it, it gets easier and easier and easier as you go on. The other thing about that, though, is I remember there were many late nights because of that. more than I was ever expecting to do. I don't think I was not expecting to do as much in architecture as people made it sound out to be. I thought all the stories were dramatized just to scare people, you know, like, oh, you choose architecture? Good luck, pal, and all this stuff. So
You're
it
like-
really started to echo to me how much of a, issue it was because I was living at the dorms at this time, So not only was like my roommate someone that I would theoretically see every day, but there was also people in my same floor that we would see in the hallways and stuff. And I just remember it was such a struggle to always go in between the dorm room all the way back to studio and everything, especially when they have those floor meetings, because they'd be like, oh, 7 o'clock, make sure you're here. And I'm like, damn, I gotta get this board done and everything. So I literally just show up, sit for the 30 minutes, and literally just bolt out the door again. And it sucks because I would look behind me and you can see everybody else on the floor just mingling with each other, like doing whatever, going back to other people's dorm rooms and hanging out. And it was just like, man, is this really what I'm about to be doing for
Man's
all
got
5
big
years here?
FOMO.
Literally though, like that was the first time I really discovered like, what FOMO was and that feeling of that, because there were definitely those moments where I was thinking like, man, all these people on the dorm floor are about to go watch this movie or whatever.
Dude, that's
And I'm having to go in on the weekends to do this stupid diagram stuff.
yeah.
I don't know about this.
Yeah. No, I didn't have that same feeling because going to K-State and into the architecture school, I never went to the dorm rooms or anything like that, so I never really had that same community that you had. Going like being able to see firsthand the FOMO. So I never, yeah, I didn't really see that, but Enrique and I had like our own little community, and so sometimes we just had fun and just like party a little bit there. So
Yeah.
because I don't know if you can, I don't think you can party in a dorm.
Not so
Without
easily.
getting
It
yelled
depends
at.
on who your RAs are. Some RAs are definitely like, if I don't see it, it never happened. And some of them are hall monitors. And they're just like, what are you doing outside of your dorm room? It's 11:02. You should be sleeping by now.
Do they actually do that?
No, I'm...
It's like that sounds
but it
like,
feels that way sometimes.
dude, that actually sounds so fun because I'm thinking about it in terms like Harry Potter style, where it's like
Of course.
where you have like everyone's in the same house in the dorms, and then it'd be so fun. Like in my head, it'd be so fun to sneak out and just be like, woo.
Yeah, dude. Well, because, I don't know, part of it too is you don't really have to sneak out. I was just kidding about the whole
Yeah.
hall monitor thing. But if it's literally just someone knocks on your door and it's like, hey, we're going to grab tacos. Do you want to go? It's 2 a.m. And you're like, sure. Okay.
That sounds.
And then you walk down all the way out to the Z lot, which is like a 30-minute walk, it feels like. And, whatever else. But, yeah, kind of fun days.
I do think the comparisons that I made were like in terms of because I did know people from outside of like architecture, but then I would start to question because what I see in our studio, we were all like, we were traumatized all together. So it was like a community of full of traumatized people for the same. It was like trauma bonding a little bit. But then whenever I see other people outside of other majors, they didn't have the same community. And so I would be so confused whenever I see them and then they're like not really hanging out with other people outside in their own major. It just felt weird to me where we as architecture design students, we have each other to support each other, but with them they were only studying by themselves, go to the libraries by themselves, unless like they were super extroverted and like they made friends within their own in their own major. But if you're not, then it's just kind of like you make friends outside of your own major, like with your dorms and stuff like that, your fraternities, all those
Yeah.
different people. But that was like the only comparison I made.
That just reminded me, though. I almost forgot about that whole aspect. In freshman year, you're still doing a bunch of other classes outside of studio. That's when you have to, finish up your gen eds if you haven't done that already, or just, I forget what K-State specifically called them, but it was like your other electives they had to do. If you had physics, you did physics. If you had to do like some whatever you're doing for your minor, you also had those classes. So in a way, it was actually a lot easier to find more friends outside of architecture back in the days, like before second year, third year, because you had to do all these other classes. So there's always these little opportunities for other pocket communities and everything like that. And to the point where, you know, there were some friends that it was kind of weird at the time too. This is a little bit of a tangent, but noticing that all the friends that I made in freshman year had graduated our fourth year, because, you know, that's like your typical 4-year path. And then it was just that moment of realization, like, wow, they're gone now. Like we just did that whole movie. Now we're the extended cut right now.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but I think going back to like the stress of the things that I went through in first year, it was very different because you're just like you said, you're learning the ropes, how to model build, how to draw plans, and so when you're learning these things for the first time, it takes time to really learn what these things are, and so you have to dedicate more of your time into studio compared to like if you're in, I don't know how it is in chemistry, but like if you're in chemistry, you learn things that's in like a lecture, and then you go to labs, and then you try to figure it out, like how to do these things, and then like that's
Seems pretty similar, to be honest with you. Like our studio versus lectures and history classes.
yeah. Well, because like when you're in labs, it's a designated time to come in to that time, but they
Oh,
don't
right,
really
blocked,
have to.
scheduled.
Yeah, they don't really have outside of that time to work on it. You have that like specific time that you're working on labs. Whereas for us, we have that designated time for studio as well, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then outside of that, we also have to come into.
We had 24/7 access,
Yeah, and that's not healthy.
which actually makes me wonder. Because I definitely know there are different studio structures. Like this might have changed, but I seem to remember Iowa State was one of those schools that they have shared desks in their studio. So you basically have to book your studio desk or something, I think, in order to have time to do your work there. Otherwise, you just have to carry everything with you and go home to work on it somewhere. Or maybe you
wow.
can strike a deal with a person who has your time slot that you're really hoping to get. You just split the desk or something. I'll have to ask a friend to see if that's how it works still. But I remember when I was shopping around for colleges, that aspect to me was like, ooh, I don't like that. Doesn't sound like a good idea. Like, ooh, brother, ooh. My brother.
No, a communal space. No, I want my own. I want my own lot. I want my
Well, it's
own
more the
house.
idea. It's like, what if I can't get it done on time? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna be screwed. So then when I heard that K-State was like, oh yeah, you have your own desk 24/7 and just go in when you want to go in. I'm like, that sounds great.
Dude,
And then now looking back on that, I'm like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea in the first place.
they spun that in the most positive direction.
Right.
ever.
That was some good marketing.
For real.
No, but I do remember that. I think that ties into what I was going to talk about next, which is that if you have 24/7 access to this thing, there's really no pressure to try and get things done as quickly as possible because there's nobody coming in after you, and you just have access to your spot whenever you want to. So then if you are a bit more inefficient with your time, it doesn't really negatively impact you because, you can just sit there all day. I'm trying to think, how late did you spend in studio in your first year? Because I'm trying to remember back. It's all a blur now. But I remember I made a specific, when I was walking out the building, I snapped a thing on Snapchat just to save it as like a memory or whatever. It's like, I think the caption was something along the lines of like, this is officially the longest I've ever spent in a room in my entire life. And it was like 5:38 in the morning. I was just leaving
What
studio.
the heck?
So then I'm like, I forget. It might have been for like 7 p.m. all the way until 5:30 in the morning. And I'm like, dude, that's insane.
Yeah. No, that is pretty crazy. I made some boundaries for myself though in the first year because I remember one of the boundaries was that for each project I would only do one all-nighter. That was one boundary for me. The other one was that I would always leave studio around 10 p.m. And because back then I was still playing like games and stuff, like League of Legends and stuff like that.
That was his priority.
Yes,
Priority
so
number one,
I was like,
gaming.
I'm leaving at 10 so I could play until 12. That was a boundary
funny.
right there.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think. I remember I pulled an all-nighter in my first year, but I can't remember if it was. I can't remember which semester that was. But it was. I just know that one, I'm naturally just a workaholic. I just like to keep myself busy because I might be low-key addicted to just productivity. If I spend a day just relaxing, I feel awful.
Yeah.
Unless I like literally am on death's door and I'm like, yeah, relaxing's nice. But it's just I feel like I'm being so lazy if I'm not doing something. So I think in my head, it might have been fueled a little bit by the toxic studio culture too, when you're all in two studios are in the same room. You have Studio A, Studio B, and you see Studio A is working harder than you at some other project, or like, oh, they have 16 diagrams to draw. We only have 14. But then subconsciously, you're about to leave, or you have like two more to do maybe, but then you see all of them are still there, and it looks like they're going to be there for another few hours yet. And then part of you is like, should I maybe be doing a little bit more? Just to, like step above some other people? Because they also, I think this is also why, because the grading system was also a lot more toxic.
Oh, right.
In
No,
first year, because
no,
it was
it
always
was.
the checks, check minuses, or from us, it was the 80% or 70%. And every single person in our studio,
I remember this.
besides like, maybe 5-10 people, or that's a lot, 5 people, were getting below B's. And that was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like I was just here for like 7 hours and this is a C?
Dude,
What am I supposed to do for an A?
it blew my mind too. Like that, like the grading system really did like make you have that type of toxic mentality a little bit, where you're like, because if you're so focused on grades, right, like coming out of high school, the all you ever known is A's and
Right.
nothing else. You come into college and then now there's only one person getting an A, and there's like 3 people getting B's, and then the rest are C's. You're like, dude, I
Yeah.
have to be the A, and so it
Because
it
you have scholarships
fuels.
on the line too.
Yeah.
I remember that's what I was scared about the most. It's just like, I don't give a crap if I have like a B in studio or whatever, but this scholarship requires me to have a certain GPA.
No, for
and
real.
If this is a 5 credit hour thing and I'm getting a C for this project, oh, like we're beefing now.
Yeah, no, for real. No, I didn't realize that until you just mentioned that just now, like how the grading system, the system itself was rigged
Yeah.
against us, so that like we were forced to have like this toxic mentality. Dude, that is crazy. That,
And I don't even know if it got better. I think it just, over time, either professors just started to become more relaxed. Again, I think they were just intentionally hard to see if people were willing to stick it out. And I think once you made it through the first semester, they're like, all right, they've been through enough. We'll
Yeah.
cut it back by like 80% now.
no, because I remember my first project being a B plus. I was like, for someone who's only getting like wanting an A's all the time, I was like, and like scholarships and stuff. I was like, what the? I need to
Yeah.
get an A so that I actually like keep these things, and
So I can
then
stay here.
yeah, and then it just it just fueled that toxicity.
And then it comes with all this self-doubt, the comparison game, and just a lot of a really bad negative cocktail. I remember
Yeah.
that was not a good time.
Yeah,
But I also can't imagine it was just all of that. I think it's a perfect ingredient mix of a lot of negative things. And yeah, I'm pretty sure there are ways that we could have easily prevented ourselves from being in studios so late. I know you said something about you were setting boundaries. Since I lived on campus, could walk anywhere, I wasn't really pressured too much to always make sure I was being 1000% efficient with my time. But I'm wondering, thinking back on our last episode with Korai, we were talking a lot about this. He was getting into like a common beef with someone saying like, oh, you don't have to spend late nights in the studio if you just prioritize your time right, and you can get these things done if you're in studio late, it's your fault. And then there's the other half where it's like, well, there's also a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then we are coming to a general conclusion where the truth is somewhere in the middle, but both are technically right.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think based off of that, do you think there was anything we specifically were doing in first year that was borderline self-sabotage and or just we were not just like aware of
Yeah.
tips and tricks to help keep us efficient? I think a lot of it for me was socializing. I was brand new to the college. I knew zero people there until I randomly met Zoe one day. I'm like, oh, I at least know one person here. That's great. But then part of me was so caught up in this, I need to make friends at this college, you know, like I'm starting from scratch. So
Right.
every moment that I was able to try and socialize, I was trying to take advantage of those moments. There would be random things, which these are the moments I actually did like a lot about studio. It's the random, like we called it midnight McMuffin runs or midnight McNugget runs, depending on when the menu changed. But it would be the studio would be like, anybody want McDonald's? And then 3 people's heads just swiveled over at the same time. They're like, I'll drive. I'm like, yes, let's do it.
I remember there was pizza too. Like that that was
pizza
would-
shuttle.
Yeah, that was big because like I'd be like jamming out on studio. I'm like I'm just listening to music, and all of a sudden I hear a drop, and it's because they dropped the pizza. I was like, what the? I thought someone
Yeah,
dropped
there's
a
so much
bottle or
grease on
something.
the pizza shuttle pizza. You have to turn it upside down. They call it the shuttle drop. You just let go of the pizza, let the cheese part of the pizza hit the top of the lid, and when you open it up, it's the grossest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's just all grease on the cover. You're like, I was about to eat that.
Yeah, but that's
No,
what
but-
I heard, and I was like,
Yeah.
someone drop a model, like you're gonna have to start over. Then you're gonna be here later.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because that's why to me it's a catch-22, right? Because socializing is very important, but too much socializing, you're not being efficient with your time anymore. I remember having those debates in my head live in that studio where people would say, oh, anybody want to run at McDonald's? I'm like, if I say no, I can get this thing done and I can leave before 10. But if I don't go to this thing, then I'm not going to be able to socialize with these people. And I probably won't build as many strong friendships in this studio either. So then I was weighing those two things in my head constantly, where I'm like, socializing or being responsible with my time. You know what? We're young. Let's just do it anyway, right? I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Dude, I definitely had that towards the later.
And then
parts
2 in the
of-
morning, I'm like, why the fuck did I do that?
I definitely had that like same experience, but towards like the later parts of our school, because dude, I was okay. Just for reference, first year Albert was not the Albert that you know right now.
It's not the model.
Yeah, first year Albert was like focused on school only and League of Legends, nothing else. I mean, it got better after
Hyperbole,
that.
yeah.
And then after that, but like, was it 3rd year, 4th year, then 5th year? I was just like, dude, these models, am I really gonna need that extra 15 minutes? Because if I need the extra 15 minutes just to finish up this model, I'm not doing my job enough. I'm not doing it good enough. And so I just was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna spend time with friends, going outside and stuff like that. But I definitely had that same feeling that you had, Ryan, but more towards my later parts of school instead of my first and second year.
So did you think that you did anything wrong in first year that if you were to go back, you would change?
I didn't think I did anything wrong my first and second year. I don't think I would change majority of the things that I did first year and second year, because a lot of those things really built up my habits of like design. Because if I had set my boundaries way stricter and like be like, I'm leaving at 8 and I'm spending free time from 8 to 12 with friends and stuff like that, I don't think I would have like developed a really good way or like good sense of designing architecture. Like I wouldn't have developed the instincts kind of, because those are the things that you only learn if you stick through enough and actually try to be part of majority of your time. Because like I think it is true that when people say that you have to live, breathe live and breathe
Live, laugh,
architecture.
love.
Yeah. But in terms of architecture, I think that it is true, but it's also important that like you step away from it. But when
Yeah.
you're just learning the ropes, if you don't have that like sense of understanding, I think you need to develop it by being in there in that same thing. So I don't think I would have changed anything from first year Albert or anything like that, because I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. But
Yeah.
looking at it from far, I'm like, wow, I was manipulated to the nth degree. Like what was like I did nothing wrong, but the system made me do it because of it. You know?
I think I would echo a lot of that too. I think for my specific situation, again, I didn't have much of a social circle established when I was just starting freshman year. So, in a way, it sounds a lot worse than it was, but like my only real friends, I guess, were my studio mates. So, to me, I was seeing it basically as the exact same thing. It's like, why would I not be in studio as long as I can be when my friend group is here
Yep.
and I'm getting work done to get the work done on time?
Yep.
Because I didn't have any friends back in the dorm room because I was never there.
Yeah.
I was always in the studio to like is a repeating cycle that
Yeah.
the more time I spend in studio, the less time I would spend outside of studio. But then it's like, well, I don't know. It was really challenging, and I don't even think I have an answer for how I would do it nowadays outside of if I were to give my past self a little bit of hindsight, I would probably say, listen, you're going to be scared by these grades being C's and B's and everything because you can't get this like extra 2 hours of time on these models. But use that time and try to hang out with as many people outside of studio as you can.
Yeah.
Because your studio people, it sounds weird, like you're gonna be in studio regardless, so you're gonna have that established place to
Yeah.
always meet with them.
Yeah.
But the friends outside of studio, you're gonna have to work a lot harder to see if you want to see them.
Yeah.
So you might as well try your best to fill that cup up as full as you can while still trying to manage those two things.
I'm having a eureka moment where it's like, damn, all the system really did like manipulate me without me knowing that I was being manipulated. Like
Is
the
to blame.
grades made me feel like I was competing with the rest of the studio for so that I can get the A. And then because I was working so hard with trying to do that, I was spending more times in studio, which meant that my friends were also in studio. And so like it was like I was being manipulated by saying that like, hey,
You mean marketed?
or it's like all of architecture school was just so, oh wow, I'm like my brain is being blown right now. It's like I didn't know I was being manipulated until I like just now.
Yeah. No, kind of same. Okay, because there was obviously a moment where we woke up, right? We realized this is a scam. This is dumb. Like we should not be doing this kind of stuff. We need to make a stand. We need
Yeah.
to do something for ourselves. And I believe the moment I realized that is a combination of things. There's like a prefix to this realization, but the realization happened well after that event happened. So during the Cove situation, we
The
were all
Cove?
online. So it studio quickly became in person, hanging out with friends, to sitting in your bedroom or living room or kitchen table for hours on end, staring at a screen, not being able to go anywhere, not being able to go outside really, and just stuck in front of architecture. And I remember deeply having some like crisis moment where I was, is this really what I'm about to do for the rest of my life? Just sitting in front of a damn screen? Because this sucks. I can't talk to nobody. I can't do anything. If my life is literally just work and there's no friendships here, there's no like socializing, then literally what's the point? And it wasn't until coming back from that whole thing in our second year, we came back and realized in third year, once we had the people start to come back to studio, I'm like, okay, this is what it was about. This is why it felt good to be in studio because there were so many people here. So then that made me have a moment of realization in my head where I'm like, okay, studio and the work, that's the part that's declining a lot of this stuff. It seemed pretty obvious, but now it's a solid fact in my mind. So how do we get the fun parts, which is socializing, hanging out with friends, and do that outside of studio? And then I think that's when we were with Professor Hits Different. That's when we all started to really form these tight bonds with each other, and we were like, you know what? We're doing a lot of work. We need to treat ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to start. It's Friday. Why are we here? We need to leave. We need to do something. We can't be in studio on a Friday night. This is
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah.
No, we're done. We're not
Yeah.
doing this. So then we're all like, okay, we're going out somewhere. We're having fun, and that's going to be it. If we had to get things done, it's going to have to wait until tomorrow.
Yeah.
So then I remember that's when we started to put together these like volleyball Friday nights. We go to the Central Park,
Yeah.
in Manhattan, Kansas, the
Yeah,
city
yeah.
park.
It's the same
And
thing.
we would just play like they had some sand volleyball courts, so we would try and grab as many people from our studio as we can. Be like, hey, we're going to this place at this time. Be there and grab a volleyball and maybe a drink or two, and then that's what we would do on Fridays. And instantly, it just felt so much better because now there was a boundary. Now we were like, okay, I am putting my foot down here. We
Yeah.
are not doing work. We are playing. It's
Because
been all work and no play for too long.
that makes so much sense though, because like looking back at it, I remember every other studio except ours was having such a bad time during COVID because they didn't have that same community that we had. Like again, I feel like we were manipulated again because of the things that we did. Well, just to give reference, you know how Professor Hits Different had us read these articles and these things, right? Yeah, it was like all implicit manipulation. It's like it was the assignment. You were given an assignment, and because of the assignment, all these like things started to develop because of it. You know, I
The
think.
bonds, and then once you had the friendship bonds, then it's no longer work. It's now socializing.
Dude, this just blew my mind once again. That like, as much as I hated those things, it really did help us in forming those bonds, because majority of the time during COVID we were all online, and even the studios next to us, they would be having meetings online, and just was not having, because we were all was it
In
7?
person, pretty much.
Yeah, all 7 studios were inside that same room, right? And
Pretty much.
out of those 7, there was only one studio, our studio, that was trying to set up all these things because of, again, I feel like we were manipulated because of it. Because they all those other studios didn't have the same. You're gonna have to read this article, and then you're gonna have to talk about this afterwards.
They just didn't have much of a studio culture in theirs, which I agree. From a certain point of view, definitely seems like it's a form of manipulation to be like, oh, let's get these kids to form bonds with each other, and then they'll always want to be in studio. It's perfect. But then also, I'd rather have that than the opposite of the other studios where it's nobody talked to each other. Once it hit 5:20, everyone just got up and left.
Yeah.
Because I doubt I don't know, maybe it was just like a change in friend groups or friend circles or something. Maybe those studios had a lot more social circles beyond studio.
Maybe.
And our primary social circle was our studio group.
Yeah.
But I think that's when we set that boundary. We decided to say, this isn't just our studio group. This is our friend group that also is in studio. And we are going to take that friend group and remove it from the studio and become friends
Yeah.
without the studio.
Yeah, no, that was so. I think that's really what the point of it was, because I remember the reason why, at least for me, I felt like I needed to get out of studio is because that's when the project started to have deeper meanings for me. Because I remember the first project was the jazz club, and that was
Yeah.
like understanding the backgrounds of like marginalized groups and understanding their history and why jazz became jazz, right? And so I was like, oh my God, this is some deeper connection that I can have with architecture. And then from there, it went on to the Simona, the Museum for New Americans, which is like immigrants and understanding the immigrant story. I was like, oh my, this is like all of these projects were just so,
Hidden the emotions.
yeah, like it was so emotionally deep, and because of it, I felt like I was always constantly in that same environment the whole time, and I needed to switch something up because over time, if you always just in that same,
It got draining.
it does get emotionally draining. It's like you need a new pace because of it, and so that's why
Yeah.
I felt like I needed that no studio on Friday nights thing.
Yeah, I think another thing we're beginning to talk about those boundaries. I think feeling a little bit more regretful about it. As happy as I was to spend time with our studio friends, especially like the Friday nights outside of studio and things, I definitely regret not having a lot of those stronger friendships outside of studios to go and chat things up on Wednesdays or Friday and I have a feeling that if I had more friendship circles that were beyond just the studio realm, I would have prioritized my time a bit differently because their schedules would not have been the same as studio schedules. It would have been, hey, we're going to this thing at 6. I'm like, oh, I probably normally would have been in the studio until about 8 o'clock or something. But now that they're trying to leave at 6, well, I got to get out of here. So,
Yeah. It's kind of like what Tom said was like if there it what's okay, what Tom said was that if you know that the schedule is this time, you should work ahead of time so you can take part in that type of like thing, right? But what happens during college most of the time is that everything is very spontaneous.
yeah. Yeah.
They're just like, oh shoot, there's this movie that's showing up. Do you want to go with us? And you're like, dude, if you told me like a week before, I'd been there. But like, I have this project that needs to be done by this. Like, if you had told me earlier, I would have
Yeah.
worked ahead of that time. College is very spontaneous. Like you
Yeah.
can't control that.
Going further on this setting boundaries thing, you we set a boundary that was scheduled, right? Because we would say every Friday we would leave studio. That was a scheduled thing. It was routine. But then when it came to more spontaneous things, those are hard to schedule.
Yeah.
Literally, because they're spontaneous. You can't schedule that stuff.
Yeah.
So there had to become another boundary that we had to set later on that allowed us to do these more spontaneous things. Because you're right, like that was a great first step, I think. In third year, we set our hard boundaries. We'd say Fridays, no more. We're gone. But then that still would conflict with a lot of the time management aspects of being able to just spontaneously leave in the middle of a Thursday. And everyone's like, oh, we're about to go play this one thing over at the rec. And then all of us are like, oh, shoot, I didn't really like plan to take another 2 or 3 hours away from my working time on this day. So what do I do? And I'm wondering from your experience, if you ever found a way to help balance that type of act, you could still get the things done while allowing yourself to
Take part
enjoy
in it.
life.
I remember whenever spontaneous things did happen, I was always pissed off. I was just like, well, like, I want to take part in this too. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I'd be so bad. But then, like, over time, I started feeling okay with the spontaneity. And I was just like, it is what it is. Like, from my point of view, the solutions were either yes, go to it, or no, don't go to it. And I just had to pick and choose between what my schedule was and like what my time frame for my projects were and whether I could go or not. And if I had more leeway, I would go. If I didn't have any leeway, I'd be like, nope, I can't. Sorry. But I'll
Yeah.
definitely join you guys next time. Let me know a week ahead. That type of thing. Because it just I was just getting so mad most of the time because like you said, FOMO was real.
Yeah. It only got worse as time went on too, I think. Because they're just a lot more opportunities as you start to learn the ropes. You begin to learn how long things will take, so you're able to more accurately plan ahead and understand your time limits for completing certain tasks. If your studio professor is asking you to get your floor plans done, you know it's approximately going to take X amount of time. So if someone came up to you, you're planning to work for X plus 2 hours, let's say, right? But then someone came up and said, "Oh, we're gonna do this event that costs or takes about 3 hours to do." Mentally in your head, you're like, you can probably get that thing done in less than X amount of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
spontaneity becomes a lot easier because you begin to realize I have more time than I think I do.
Yeah.
I think that's a big lesson from that. You were saying the whole "it is what it is" thing. I think that was one of the biggest eye-opening things that I began to learn as I went through studio is just, you know what? These projects are not this important. To
Yeah.
miss out on watching the Avengers movie, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Hell no. I'm not going to skip out on the biggest movie of the year just to work on a stupid diagram. No.
Yeah.
If anything, I'll come in at 6 in the morning to finish it off. It's really that big a deal. But no, I'm not. I'm not skipping out on this thing.
Yeah.
I noticed myself as time went on. I started to get a lot more aggressive against studio, and had this sense of like confinement, like the leash or whatever, like barking at the leash or like tugging on it to rip it off of the tree, and then just start to run away as fast as possible.
This man started becoming a rebel.
In a way, I mean, yeah. This is like, there's no reason this should be taken away from my life. Like, this is so dumb. It's a building that's never going to get built. Why am I taking it so seriously where I can't, for 3 hours of my day, leave to watch this movie with friends? That's so dumb.
Yeah, and
No, no.
there's like with friends and families too. That like you can't take away like these types of memories, these types of like these are so important.
There's something I found too. I had to look it up. I couldn't remember what it was called, but it was called Parkinson's Law. And you haven't heard about that before. It basically says you will work on a project for as much time as you've given yourself to work on that project. So let's pretend, you know the whole adage where it's the teacher's like, "There's no way you can get this essay done in just a day. It should take about 3 weeks to do." And then you're like, "Watch me." And then you're like, "Okay, yeah, this is a lot of work. Maybe I should have done a little bit more than just 24 hours." But miraculously, right? You still got it done.
Yeah,
And what would have taken 3 weeks, you just got done in 24 hours. That's a
Yeah.
problem, though, because you can get pretty addicted to that whole procrastination aspect where it's like, oh, that was a fun little blast of stress and anxiety, and I was still able to accomplish that goal.
that's legit what I did with the portfolio with the farmers market project. I've been like meaning to try to redesign the farmers market, and I was just like putting it in the back burner until one day I was just like, let me just do this within 24 hours, and yeah, it happened. And I think it's probably
Yeah.
one of my favorite projects now that I think about it. I don't know if
But
it works.
I bring that up because you can actually use that to your advantage. There was, I don't know, there's some TikTok I saw where it's trying to, the way that they brought it up, they were saying that you can hack your brain to get tasks done by just giving yourself a false time limit, set a timer for 60 minutes, and see how much you can get done in that 60 minutes. Because subconsciously, your brain does kind of get fueled by that idea of trying to get things done as quickly as possible. But when you know you have unlimited amounts of time to get this thing done, it's easy to prioritize something else and then just throw it to the back burner.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been meaning to do dishes. Really, it probably takes 30 minutes to do. But because you know it only takes about 30 minutes, you're like, oh, I can find 30 minutes at any point of the week. And then it's Saturday now, and you haven't done it. You're like, this is a problem. Why is this like this? So I bring that up because you could use that to help you in studio. This is part of those time management tips. If you are finding yourself in a situation where you're constantly matching up to your extreme time limit, say you're trying to get it done by the end of the day, even though it probably should have taken 2 hours, if you block out, set a timer on either the computer or like your phone or something, and just put 2 hours there, you will have so unbelievably focused attention on that specific task because
Mm-hmm.
now your brain knows
Mm-hmm.
there's this ticking timer in the back that's
Mm-hmm.
going, and you're trying to race it to get this thing done. And
Yeah.
then that surge of dopamine you get once you reach that goal before the timer goes off, amazing. And now you just did an even better thing because you just scheduled a 2 hour block and you got that task done.
Yeah.
Where if you didn't have that timer, you might have done 3, 4, 5 hours just to
Yeah.
do that thing. Because then you might have, worked on it for 30 minutes,
Yeah.
talked to a person in your studio, come back to it. Maybe spend about 10 minutes looking, and then you're like, ooh, I wonder what kind of floor would look nice in here.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll through Pinterest for about 25 minutes, realize you didn't find anything cool, come back, finish the task. Now you're 3 hours in
Yeah.
of your 2 hour task, and
Yeah.
you're only halfway done.
Yeah. I do agree because I didn't necessarily block things out for myself. It was more of like a list of things I needed to do that day. And so if I get ahead of schedule, I'm like, oh, dude, that means I can relax the next few weeks. That is crazy. So I would reward myself for those types of things.
Yeah, I think all in all, if I were to be able to go back in time, I would slap myself across the face and tell myself to do that thing because I did not manage my time well enough, which is why I know this thing would have worked so well for me. Because I do this thing now where, like, basically right after we finish recording this thing, I'm about to set a timer to finish up my dishes and everything, get my laundry started. And I know now because of that trick, I can get much more done in a day than I would have in my entire weekend, you know? So that's just such an unbelievably powerful time management tip. If you haven't tried it out already, I would really highly suggest trying it out and seeing how it works for you. But while we're still on this idea of setting boundaries and trying to find other time management tips, did you find anything that you found really helped your productivity in studio?
Like I said earlier, I think one of the things that made me just because people always ask me how I can get done, how I can get my projects done so fast and so early compared to a lot of people, and I think it's really for me is the list of things I need to do to that day, and then because I have a set of amount of like things I need to do, I understand how much time I need to do them for. Now I have some free time to do other things. So things like I like watching movies outside the studio and just like relaxing was such a good reward for me because now I get to relax. Like now I'm not in the mindset of studio, but definitely for me was doing lists instead of blocking out from what really helped me was the list for the day. And then
That's a good point. I can see that actually being very discouraging to certain people who, if they set a certain time limit in the day to get a certain item off their list and they don't meet that, it's almost like they're setting themselves up for failure every
yeah,
single time. And that can get really discouraging if it keeps compounding every single time you make a list
yeah,
to the point where you're like, man, what's wrong with me? Like, if I can't even get this thing done when I'm trying to get it done on time, then what am I going to do? I might as well just not even try to do this list anymore.
yeah.
And that leads to getting disorganized and all this other stuff. So, did you ever find a moment where you transitioned between that? Because I definitely remember having those moments where I also began to list out my items.
Yeah.
So, I found when I was trying to do the scheduled list, it was stressful where, oh man, I have this deadline now. If it's not done at 3 o'clock, then now it's a disappointing thing.
Yeah.
I think the difference between those two is you're just arbitrarily setting yourself an hour of focus. We brought this up, I can't remember if it was with the episode of Korai, but we used the word not time management, but time discipline. And I think a lot of students can benefit from thinking about it that way instead of time management. Time discipline, at least to me, it means you are disciplining yourself to stay focused to do this task for this amount of time. If you get it done, great. If you don't, at least you were focused and you got as much of it done in that time as you possibly could. But if you were trying to time manage and just set an arbitrary deadline of, I need to get these floor plans done by 3 p.m., why? Why at 3 p.m.? Is it because you know your other task is going to take a couple hours? Is it because You have to go to this appointment thing. Like, what? To me, it doesn't seem like there's any real benefit to setting a scheduled timeline of a list
Yeah.
unless there's legitimately things you're trying to get done. You have a reservation. You have to meet with friends at a park. You have to pick somebody up from a spot. Those are things where that's helpful.
Yeah. I literally, yeah, I literally told myself, I'm gonna get this done in 2 hours, and I didn't get it done. Now I have to move on to another thing, and it just was so stressful to me because I don't know how you guys are typically, but I'm a type of person that if I'm working on something, I will work on that until it's done. I can't really do the um I'll work on
80%
this.
rule.
Yeah, I can't
For
do the
professor,
80.
it's different.
I really can't do the 80% rule where it's like I have to, like the 80% rule of like work on this thing until it's 80% done and then move on to another thing. I'm not that person that's like, okay, 100%, 100%, 100%. Because I'm the type of person that dwells on things that are not finished. I need closure.
Yeah.
And so I need to get closure by finishing out that certain part of the project. And so the list for the day actually helps me out a lot. And then if whatever doesn't get finished, I then put it on another list for the next day.
I think this is a good time to transition into our final point, I guess, is trying to begin to prioritize your personal life before studio. So if you look back at the episode, right, we've talked about what our lifestyle used to be like before we had any sense of what architecture was, the struggles with trying to figure it out, plus dealing with this, the negative side effects of always being in studio all the time. And we then moved into trying to figure out how to set those boundaries for ourselves and try to figure out how to get out of studio more. And then I think at a certain point, I was still feeling a little bit unfulfilled because I still felt like studio was my main priority. And I felt like I was constantly sacrificing these other parts of my life that I wanted to definitely prioritize over studio. But I just felt like I couldn't do that. Like for whatever reason, I was not giving myself permission yet to do other things beyond studio that were beneficial to me mentally and physically and all that. So I think it wasn't until fifth year, in combination with the senioritis, in combination with realizing in the real world these things just don't matter. Studio projects are not that important
And even your time in Italy.
compared. And yeah, the time in Italy, realizing the whole different work culture of people don't work this hard like they do in the United States. So why are we doing this to ourselves?
Yeah.
So this perfect storm of just realizing there's more to the life than studio and you should prioritize yourself before work. That made me realize in fifth year, like, okay, this is our last year of everything. Last year of campus, last year of studio, last year of seeing these friends, last year of a lot of things. So then I think it would took that perfect storm of things to make me realize and give myself permission to say, you know what? We need to prioritize ourselves first. We need to prioritize our social life. We need to prioritize everything else besides studio because at the end of the day, half of the projects that we're going to work on this year aren't even going to make it to this portfolio. So there's no real reason to go ultra hard mode and try to get these things perfect because who cares, right? So for me, and maybe you have a different experience with this too,
Yeah.
but I knew that I wanted to prioritize getting to the gym because if I can't get to the gym, my whole entire week just feels like it's down in the dumps. I started to notice that more and more going from like third year into fourth year as things kept getting busier and busier. It would keep pulling my other activities outside of studio away from my life and just dedicating every single moment it felt like to studio. So in fifth year, I'm like, no more. We have to figure out how to get our things done first before we do studio because studio can wait. Studio will be there no matter what.
Yeah.
And then what happens too, since I'm trying to prioritize social life, what happens if after studio, come around 5 o'clock or something, everyone wants to go get dinner? Oh, shoot, in my head, I was going to go to the gym after studio. So now that's also conflicting with things. So in my head, I began to write a list of things that I knew I wanted to prioritize. Okay, I want to go to the gym. I want to do that first thing because if I can get it out of the way, Then that's going to set my day up well, and I'm also going to get the gym out of the way. Then I can go to studio. Then I can do whatever else after studio. It's completely open. If I go back to studio, cool. If I don't go back to studio, even better. The best scenario, everyone in studio is like, you know what? Let's go out to Aggieville for the rest of the night. I'm like, you know what? Perfect. Let's do it. So, TLDR. I wrote a list and I prioritized the things I want to do before even stepping foot into studio.
I think what I did, I like, there's a balance between doing too much work and then spending too much time with your friends and stuff like that. And so I think mine was just having that one consistent thing to go to with friends, just to spend time outside of studio, was like the only hard boundary that I ever did for, like, let's just say for the week. Because I remember 5th year, on Wednesdays, we would always go to this one place that would sell burgers and stuff for $5. And
Yeah.
that was the time that we were just like vent out our frustrations, just talk about things outside of architecture, design, and just spend, what was it, 2-3 hours just being us.
Yeah.
And then,
And then there would be a moment where people would be like, okay, here's the going back to studio crew, and here's the we're done for the day, so we're going home crew.
Yep.
And it was just like a mutual understanding at that point. It's like, all right, shake
Bye.
hands. See you guys tomorrow.
yeah. And it was just like, just that one thing could make a ton of difference for you so that you can start to balance between a workaholic versus someone who doesn't even want to work.
Lifeaholic?
I want to be a lifeaholic.
Can we coin that? Can we? Yeah.
yeah. Workaholic and lifeaholic. I like that. But just doing that one thing, and it doesn't even have to be too crazy. Just spend time with each other, 2-3 hours with each other, just talking about things outside of architecture. And it was so fun for us.
This actually goes back to our previous season. If you have been a longtime Crit Room follower, you might know this episode. It's the Greek life and architecture episode. I think it was Anna that said it. But the quote was something along the lines of, when you're looking back at the whole whirlwind of your years in college, what are you going to remember? Are you going to remember the nights you spent in the studio? Are you going to remember the $5 burgers and the 3 hours that you spent with your friends at Hilo? I remember the Hilo parts. I don't remember the studio things.
Yeah. Dude, I don't remember, because I remember I remember I would be doing diagrams and stuff like that. But then I don't really remember it, It's just kind of outside of there. But then the times I do spend with friends and that stuff outside of architecture, I remember those things. Because I remember after school ended, we would go to the lake and
Yeah.
go to the beach. Those are fun, and it's like not even architecture related, and those are the things that I remember
Yeah.
vividly.
And yeah, I'm trying to think of a beautiful way, a poetic way to summarize all this up. And people can frolic away from the video into studio and feel empowered and happy to do things again. But I think, honestly, it just comes down to, I don't even want to say it's a hard-hitting reality. It's just understanding there are more important things in life. And as cliche as it sounds, the older you get, the more you realize it. The less you're focused on the grind mentality, the more you're like, you know what? Life is about quality connections. And if I'm making those quality connections while I'm in studio, great. But you can probably make even higher quality ones if you're not in studio and hanging out with friends, going on trips during spring break, for week-long trips to Colorado, doing these like little weekend mini adventures, even though you should probably be doing some studio work to get ready for next week. Saying, you know what? I know it's wrong, but what if I do it anyway? As
Yes,
the great Albert would say.
That started 3rd year. I know it's wrong.
Yeah.
What if we do it anyway? Because those are the things those tiny things really do add up, and it makes you remember those like great moments. Dude, I don't know. It was fun, and I don't think I could ever remove those from my memories, because yes, school and studios are important, but those things that you build that are outside of studio are just as probably even more important actually, because
Hmm.
you can't take those things away.
Yeah. And I think, just as a little bit of a responsible disclaimer, I think it's important for us to say this is not saying F studio, never go to it, forget your homework, don't show up to studios and all this stuff. That's the wrong message to take away from it.
Hmm.
The message we're trying to say is allow yourself permission to do more things. If it means sacrificing 10 to 25% of the potential of a project just to get it done for a certain make crit
Hmm.
or whatever, really at the end of the day, what does your heart want, you know?
Hmm.
So you might as well try to get both.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, it doesn't even have to be something big. It can just be something small that you set
Getting
yourself.
burgers.
Getting burgers, friends. Easy. That's easy.
Yeah.
$5.
Go to the lake on the weekends.
Yeah. Once per month.
Yeah.
Easy. And then you just start building that type of thing, and then you
And
just
being more efficient with your time. Learning those tips that we were talking about, setting the timers in your head, trying to learn ways to be more efficient by watching. Oh, we didn't like. I don't want to get too into it because we're already going so long on this episode. But now you guys are so lucky because you have AI now. You can literally do half the that we used to take a week to do in a day. You can render out your project by typing into Midjourney. Render this for me. Boom, done. You know how long that would have taken us to do in studio? We'd have to sit there for 4 hours to wait for that thing to export. Okay, exaggeration, but you know,
V-Ray be like.
yeah. Even with Enscape, it's tweaking materials, tweaking all this, tweaking
Yeah.
like hours go by, and now you can just clickety clack, throw into Midjourney, gets the out, and you're like, that's good enough for a mid crit. Okay.
Yeah.
I think my biggest takeaway is really understanding what your priorities are in or multiple areas of your life. Studio, what's your priority with that? Are you trying to really get high grades? Are you really trying to get the best project out of the studio? Or are you simply just trying to do enough just to get through it? Your choice, you know, whatever you want to do. But then, same with social life in college. Are you the person who really likes to go out and party as much as you can? Or are you more of a homebody and you don't really care about going out to socialize that frequently and you can just do it like once or twice a week? I think figuring all those things out for yourself can help you understand how to schedule your time better than what we could ramble on for hours to tell you what to do. That's how I fifth year is when I really started to figure all that out. I realized like I'm much more of a homebody person, so socializing is not that big a deal to me. If I go out once or twice a week, that's enough for me. I'm cool with skipping out on the other 3 or 4 days if there's some random thing that happens. Otherwise, it came down to I also really want to go to the gym as much as I can, so I'm going to prioritize that before going to other things. I also realized that I was pretty content with my skills with my studio projects. I wasn't really trying to be more ambitious with what I did and trying to come up with the best renders in the studio, trying to come up with the coolest floor plans or whatever else. I'm like, I'm sitting at a pretty good spot. I'm pretty content. It's enough to sit pretty well with my GPA and it's enough to for sure graduate. I'm just going to keep it here and fill out some other buckets with my time and energy. And that is probably this entire episode in a nutshell, from my opinion.
Yeah. I think mine would be more specific in terms of like balancing time. I think that my biggest takeaway would be that lists are your friends, and don't be scared of doing lists instead of doing a schedule, because lists, like the scheduling thing, might be too strenuous, too, because sometimes you can just sit there hours on end trying to schedule things, and instead of doing things, now you're just scheduling for that day instead. And so like we know people that just sit there for like 1, 2, 3 hours just trying to figure out what the schedule is going to look like, what the blocking of the different times for the whole week's going to look like, and then not do the work instead. And now all the blocking has to be changed again, because instead of like now the 2, 3 hours that you've decided to do something, like the work that you said that you're gonna do for that schedule is now being used to schedule. And so I would suggest
Right.
doing like just list out the different things that you need to get done today, and then hopefully you can get them done for that day. And if not, cool, then you can put the rest of the items for the next day. But don't stress yourself by over blocking and trying to figure out what the blocks of the time you're gonna work on things. Just relax a little bit, move it to the next day.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up everything in this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Also DM us what you want us to talk about next. We're the podcast for the people. We're trying to help you guys out. You got to communicate with us what you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. Let us know literally anything, and we'll see what we can do with it. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this episode, check out a few of our previous ones. Whether you're interested in hearing more about how to learn studio culture, we have an episode on that from our previous season that you'd probably like to check out, and more. So what else should they do, Albert?
And we just recorded one with Korai about the toxic school environment type of thing. So if you're interested in that type of topic, you should also check out our previous episode to this one.
Yeah. But otherwise, that's all we got. So
Yes, sir.
we'll see you in the next episode, and
Don't forget to save. Adios.
Bye.